Kathy, before we focus on today's interviews, I thought I'd give a quick apology to our viewers as to why there's been such a long gap between these 40th birthday interviews. At the beginning of the year, it was our intention to interview many of those who were involved in the early days of the Guild. We started out strong and we're ever so glad that we've captured those stories on video as an ongoing record of the memories held by our long-term members. We had a lot of fun doing the interviews and certainly learnt interesting facts that we'd not heard of before. But for both of us, life got in the way for many months. We have both had some life issues to contend with, and the truth is that we both have leadership roles in the Guild, which is, I suspect, one of the most active guilds in Australia, because, my lord, there seems to be a gathering or meeting at least a couple of times every week. And this has added to the challenge of keeping up with our interviews. In previous years, we've conducted interviews with some of our well-known quilters, and it's our intention to keep doing so in the future. We have a list: Michelle Hill and Rachel Deneni. We will pin down a time to interview you soon. So our commitment to everyone is that in 2025, we will do some more. Thank you all for sharing this somewhat interrupted journey down memory lane with us this year. We've loved doing it and we hope you've loved watching it. Kathy, today we've dropped by to chat with one of our well-known SA Quilters who joined the Guild in its very early years. She also happens to be one of our very first quilt shop owners and is, I suspect, the longest standing quilt shop owner in South Australia. You won't have to look far around me to try and work out which shop we're in. But let's go in and see what memories of the many years that she's been involved in our quilting community, as well as the history of her shop. Hello, Lyn Uppill.
Hello, Chris.
Thank you for agreeing to be here with us today. It's quite an honour. Our chat is particularly special because you were one of the very early members of the Guild, and you have the amazing distinction of being one of the only SA quilt shops from those early days that's still operating. What an amazing achievement.
I need a medal. It doesn't seem that long.
It doesn't when you look back on it, does it? Now, if I don't ask you this very first question, Kathy won't be at all happy with me. So, do I have permission from you for us to publish this video on our YouTube
Yes,
channel?
you do.
Thank you. You'll be as famous as Cindy and Jane before you know it. So, first question. How did you first hear about the Guild, and what are your earliest memories of those times?
I think it was going to the first exhibition that the Quilters Guild held, of all places at Unley, down at the town hall, and it was in the September, and my family had to wait until I'd been to the exhibition before we went on our camping holiday.
Because that was before terms, wasn't it?
Yes, it was school holidays. And my children back then were only little, so they had to wait. And this exhibition was amazing. I think I took a photo of every quilt. But it was the days of Josie Fradd and Alison Verrier and
Lesser Siegel.
Well, lesser, but a whole lot of other people that we don't have any longer, sadly.
No.
And it was an incredible exhibition, and that was pretty exciting. And I did a workshop with Robin Mesner.
Yes, I remember Robin.
And that was my first. My mum did patchwork. I grew up. I was never going to do that. But my mum did English paper piecing. And Robin came up to the country and did a weekend workshop. And I may have heard about it from Robin. I can't remember exactly. It's too long ago.
Well, Robin's husband was a diplomat in the States, wasn't he? And that's where she learnt it.
Yes, and he ended up being governor of Norfolk Island.
Right.
So when I actually went to Norfolk Island to teach, they'd just left. Otherwise, it would have been lovely if they'd been there. And so I didn't go to a lot of meetings because I lived 2 hours away, but the meetings were at Gartrell.
Yes. We've talked about times at
Yes.
Gartrell.
And it wasn't long before I was teaching patchwork and then knew all about the Quilters Guild, so it's a long time ago.
Now, some of that teaching was in Saddleworth, wasn't it?
A little bit, you as well.
Yeah, me as
I
well.
remember.
A long time ago.
And I taught in Anguston in the Barossa Valley for 3 years. So I'd load the car and do a morning, afternoon and night class, but I was younger back then.
Yeah.
And that was 3 years I taught in the Barossa.
Now, in terms of the Guild, I believe that you were one of our very early vice presidents. How did you get to be a VP when you lived at Solder Springs?
No, I brought my shop to the Quilters Guild, and I think we were the first shop ever to be invited, because in the past, before that, they had meetings but no shops. And I think we were the first shop ever. The girls had come on a bus trip to the farm, and after that asked us to bring our shop to the Guild. And it was the annual meeting, and they couldn't get volunteers to go on the committee. And I've always been a committee person, and I got a bit cross about that, and so I volunteered. But I knew I was moving the shop to Adelaide.
Yes. Your first shop was actually on the farm, but what prompted you to come down here?
Oh, okay. I was on the farm for 4 years, and I did lots of weekend retreats where girls would come up and stay. So I'd do the cooking, teach the class work, but I was younger back then. And we did have lots of bus loads from Adelaide, and in the end, I was doing mail orders to Adelaide virtually every day. And it was quite a drive to the nearest post office. And farming was not good at that point. And Sasha was in Adelaide at uni, so I made the big decision to move to Adelaide. My husband didn't speak to me for about a week.
I remember.
So that's why, really. Metro Adelaide didn't have a quilt shop. There was one at Harndorf, and one had just opened Lower North East Road, but there was none close to the metro area, and I had fabric that the other shops didn't have. I still do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was in demand, so I thought, no, I'll move it to Adelaide. The problem with a country shop is that you have to buy a huge bolt of fabric, and after a while the girls have all bought that, and then so it's a limited clientele.
I remember contacting you and saying I'm coming up to visit my parents because they lived in the mid-north, and you rang me the night before and said, no, don't come, meet me at the top of Unley Road because I'm thinking about moving my shop. But it wasn't to this location, was it?
No, it wasn't. We moved to a house 1 bus stop further up, and Sasha and I lived, because we needed somewhere to live, so we lived at the back and had the shop in the front room, and it lasted 4 months. And there was fabric up the passage and in the lounge room. So on a nightly walk, I'd walk up and down, and this shop had a for lease sign, so I quickly went home and rang up, and somebody had just taken out the lease. But I had shop 9, so now where the orthodontist is.
Okay.
So I've been in this location ever since.
Well, as you say, it's good and central, isn't it?
Yes. And parking, normally parking at the back, plenty of parking.
So how long have you been here?
31.
31 years, that's amazing, isn't it?
It's a long time.
It is a long time. Now, quilt shops tend to focus on at least one specialisation, and you're particularly known for your Japanese focus. What prompted you to go in this direction?
I've always loved Japanese textiles, so especially traditional ones. And I would have been the first shop, definitely in South Australia, about 25 years probably, it might be longer, to put in a range of Japanese fabrics. And back then our classroom was in the room out the back, and
I remember that.
yes, and the head of the company who was wholesaling them was over from Sydney, and I became quite excited, very passionate about Japanese fabrics, and I ordered the whole range, and she's never forgotten it. And so that started really that love of Japanese textiles. And
Because you travel to Japan regularly, don't
now
you?
I do, yes. I had never been early on, but we did all the quilt shows on the eastern states for many, many, many years, and they were really popular in Sydney and Melbourne, not so popular in Adelaide. But then 20 years ago, went to Japan for the first time, and instant love affair. So I've had Japanese textiles all that time. So really it was just, I loved them even then.
Now, last year, I think it was, at Festival of Quilts here in Adelaide, your students had a special exhibit of their work, and it was amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about what doing a class here at Riverlea Quilts is like for your students? Because there was no sense that, like a workshop, they'd all produced a similar thing, just different fabrics. The quilts are quite unique, aren't they?
They are.
Might start off with an idea.
They all have the same idea, and they do get notes each month. They meet once a month, and I've got 4 groups this year, so I've got to come up with original projects, and that's quite hard after
Yes.
I've been running that for 16 years. And
That's an achievement in itself,
yes,
isn't
and
it?
some of the girls from that first year are still coming. They love it because the projects are original. They're all interpretations of Japanese ideas or festivals. We've done food festivals, pottery, even vegetables. Houses, you can see the houses. And the girls see what I've done and get some notes, but they all are really good at going home and doing their own interpretation. So if you look into the quilts, the elements will be the same, but the actual quilts are all different. And I've got some incredibly talented girls.
Yeah. Well, that was evident at the special exhibit because they were outstanding.
And Jenny won Best of Show. She keeps telling me you should have won it. The year that you came runner-up with her the triptych of the snow wood blocks.
That was stunning.
It was.
That really was
Jenny's incredibly talented. But she gives me credit, and I say, no, you're the clever one. But she lived in Japan for a while, and I got her started on the Japanese adventure.
Right.
So she's making amazing things, but lots of girls. I encourage them to be individuals, not to do the same.
Not be sheep.
No, that's right. Well, and people will say, oh, I can't do that, and I've proven they can.
I think that's a mark of a good teacher too, to inspire them to go in their own direction.
To me, that's what it should be.
Yeah.
But
well, I think Kathy, before we did some video, and Kathy did some look around the shops, and I'm sure she'll incorporate it in this video, but it'll be very evident that the shop is very vibrant in terms of inspiring not only people that come to your classes, but people that just drop in.
yes, yeah. I had people from Sweden this week that
Really?
walked in and went, oh my goodness. But it does look all very Japanese at the moment. Things change. If I'm teaching a modern quilt, well, there'll be modern quilts on the wall, but today mostly it's Japanese.
Now, this was not on our script at all, but you've just prompted me. You also have a rather eclectic and extensive antique and vintage quilt collection. Tell us about that.
I do. Oh, Chris. I need more of them hanging in the shop. When I went to Houston every year to quilt market, and in the early days I went every year, because back then we couldn't get all the things in Australia, and I wanted to have things that other shops didn't have. And back then I always have loved antique quilts, and now I have antique Japanese textiles as well. And back then they were easy to find and they weren't expensive. So
Times have changed.
yes, they have. So I do have a large collection of my poor daughter. No, she loves quilts, so it's okay.
So have you got them on exhibit at home? Do you have them on walls?
Now and again.
Right.
Yes. I should hang some more in here.
Well, they look pretty impressive when you fill this room with them.
Yes.
Yeah. Lyn, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your quilting journey.
That's a pleasure, Chris.
This interview has taken a while to come to fruition, hasn't it? There's been little speed bumps along the way, but it's always worth catching up, and I hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Lyn.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.